Obviously, when it comes to games in the Mario universe, most of them would focus on Mario. We've had a few that star Luigi, and on the DS there was one game starring Princess Peach. Well, Peach has finally got her second game, Princess Peach Showtime on the Nintendo Switch. Now, this is a fairly unique game that is actually surprisingly fun. But before I get started, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and consider subscribing, and now let's take a look at Princess Peach Showtime. The story begins with Princess Peach and a couple of toads going to the Sparkle Theater to watch some plays, when suddenly a portal opens up and the evil Grape appears. She takes over the theater and her Sour Bunch mess up all the plays. They also capture the Sparklas, who are the stars of the different plays. Peach then meets Stella, a Sparkle Sprite who is the guardian of the theater. Peach agrees to help Stella use the power of Sparkle to fix the plays that are being ruined by the Sour Bunch, rescue the Sparklas, and defeat Grape. We eventually learn that Grape's ultimate goal is to create the ultimate tragedy. However, it's never really explained why she chose to take over the Sparkle Theater to do this, which in my opinion leaves the story feeling a little bit hollow. Really, with this game, it feels like the story was more of just an afterthought. This game has a surprisingly small cast of characters. Of course, you have Princess Peach, and your partner in the story is the Sparkle Sprite, Stella. And in the very beginning of the game and at the very end, there are a couple of toads. Then inside the theater and in the different plays, you meet the Theets. These are the theater people, and despite wearing different costumes, they're all basically the same and fairly boring. The exceptions are the Sparklas. These are the stars of the different plays, and therefore they are a little bit more interesting. Then for enemies, you have Grape and her Sour Bunch. Grape is a brand new enemy who is actually kind of really extremely uninteresting. You don't really learn much about her motivation, why she's trying to make a tragic play, or why she chose Sparkle Theater. Maybe someday we'll get a sequel that'll explain more, and actually there is a scene at the end of the game which hints that we might get a sequel. But for now, she's kind of just boring and uninteresting. Grape's main henchmen are the Sour Bunch. Now, there are a few varieties of them, but basically their only goal is to cause mischief in the different plays around the theater. Some of them look kinda like noseless Theets, some of them can fly, and some of them are actually like small bosses. Now, besides Grape, there are actually 4 real bosses, and while the bosses themselves have 0 personality, their fights are actually pretty good. Something that I found kinda interesting is that there were 0 returning Mario enemies, not a single Goomba, Koopa, or Blooper at all. And while that is fine, I thought it was a little weird because besides Peach and the 2 toads, there's literally nothing tying this game to the Mario universe. This game's big gimmick is that when you're in a play, Peach gets a special transformation that turns her into the star of the play. These transformations give Peach different powers and really change up the gameplay. First, we have the Sword Fighter transformation. Now this obviously gives Peach a sword and you use it to fight enemies. You then make your way through different scenes trying to reach the goal, and depending on what enemy you're fighting, you can sometimes do this kind of cool counter dodge attack, and it's really fun. Patissiere Peach is pretty good. Obviously, you become a patissiere and you make cookies and decorate cakes. Now, when you're making the cookies, you need to repeatedly tap the B button to mix the cookies in the bowl, but if you mix just a little bit too far, the whole thing explodes. Now, there are a couple instances where you need to just mix a single bowl here or there, but usually you're rushing between a few different bowls trying to make as many cookies as you can in a set time. It's pretty fun, but it's actually deceptively difficult, as the explosions happen even if you mix slightly too much. Decorating the cakes, on the other hand, is pretty simple. You just sit on a swing positioned over a giant cake. You're shown a picture of what the cake should look like, and you just need to make it match, and it is really, really easy. Way easier than mixing the cookies. Kung Fu Peach is pretty self-explanatory. You do Kung Fu. You can kick enemies to send them flying and do some cool acrobatics. It's pretty fun, but there really isn't that much interesting to say about it, honestly. Ninja Peach is actually really fun. You can use some cool stealth techniques to hide from enemies, and then dash forward and attack them from behind. You can even do wall jumps to climb up high, and it's just so cool and so much fun. Actually, a big part of what I like about the ninja stages is that there were sections where you automatically run and you have to jump and attack with good timing, kinda like a better version of Super Mario Run. I have to say the ninja transformation is probably my favorite.
Howdy there.
As Cowgirl Peach, you use a lasso to tie up enemies and grab objects like barrels. You can also ride a horse as you chase enemies in speeding trains. But, like Kung Fu Peach, there's not really much else interesting to say about it. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Enchanting.
Now, the mermaid power-up is probably my least favorite. You swim around singing. You can control nearby fish with your singing and use them to interact with the environment. But personally, I didn't really care for it. I thought it was kind of boring and a bit too easy, even compared to most of the rest of the game.
Time to shine.
Figure Skater Peach skates around on the ice, performing synchronized spins and jumps. As cool as it felt to glide around on the ice, the figure skater levels kind of felt repetitive and kind of boring after a while. And it probably doesn't help that in all three you did basically the exact same figure skating boss fight challenge. So yeah, not really great. Mighty Peach is pretty cool. Peach becomes a cool superhero, which gives her super strength and a mighty punch, and in certain sections you can even fly around. Now the levels for this transformation felt really epic, even if the stages themselves were fairly basic, just run and defeat enemies.
On the case.
As Detective Peach, you solve crimes by using your magnifying glass to look for clues. If you want to identify an important discovery or make an accusation, you use your Strike of Intuition. And if you're wrong when you use your Strike of Intuition, you'll take damage. Now, the detective levels felt kind of slow, but honestly it feels kind of appropriate. Detective work is supposed to be very methodical and careful, and that's what it feels like here.
Easy. Leave it to me.
Dashing Thief Peach is a sort of secret agent spy. You use a cool grapple tool to move through environments and activate electronics. You have to avoid enemy robots as you infiltrate their compounds, and overall it's pretty fun. What makes this game so good in my opinion are the levels. Now, they're all fairly short and easy, but with the different transformations, the gameplay can vary wildly from one stage to the next. In some stages, you're navigating through tons of enemies, while in other it's a more calm, peaceful setting. Now, you may say that this comes from the fact that the levels are all supposed to be different plays and it's going on this big theater. However, in my mind, the setting being in a theater is actually just a way to tie all these levels together in a way that makes sense for a single game. I think when making this game, the designers had all sorts of different ideas of what type of game to make. But instead of just picking one idea, they did all of their ideas and just later on picked the setting to match. Which, honestly, I'm not saying is a bad thing, because it works well. So while the level design itself varies too wildly for me to really go into detail, let's take a look at the overall structure of the game and the levels. For each transformation, there are 3 separate levels you can play. In the first level for each transformation, you start out as just regular Peach. You use a ribbon and sparkles to interact with the environment, making plants bloom, healing defeats, and defeating enemies. Partway through the stage, you discover the transformation and learn how to use it, and then the rest of the stage is specific to whatever abilities that particular transformation has. In the second stage of each transformation, you start already having the power. The stage is generally a little more difficult, but it's still pretty easy. Usually the second stage plays fairly similarly to the second half of the first stage for each transformation. In the third stage for each transformation, you once again start already having the power. The goal of this stage is to rescue the Sparkler for that particular power. Now, some of them you're basically just rescuing them and escaping, but in some stages you actually work with the Sparkler to escape. The third stage for each transformation is usually a bit shorter than the first or second stage. In each level you have to find and collect Sparkle Gems. You use these gems to open boss doors. In the theater there are 5 floors and the basement. The basement is where you find the third stage for each transformation. Then on floors 1 through 5 there are 4 stages each. After you finish the 4 levels on a floor, a boss door appears. You use Sparkle Gems to open the boss door, and after you defeat the boss you can move on to the next floor of the theater. These boss fights are actually pretty good. They're pretty unique and offer a slight bit of challenge, though still not a lot. For these fights you're actually regular Peach and you use your ribbon. But something I had to laugh at, Peach and Stella use the power of Sparkle. However, the bosses use the power of Darkle. What the heck is Darkle? That's not even a word. Something I thought was really pointless was needing to use the Sparkle Gems to open the boss doors. The Sparkle Gems are so easy to get that it's really easy to get enough for each boss door, making the fact that you have to use them at all completely pointless. The final boss is kinda dumb. The Sparklers give you their power, which transforms you into Radiant Peach. But the actual fight is just so easy. You just spin in a circle, avoiding attacks and spamming the attack button. And the second phase is even easier. Grape's attacks in the second phase are so slow and easy to avoid, and really it was just a super disappointing final fight. But not surprising considering how easy most of the game was. In addition to the main story and levels, there were actually a few extra things to do. There's a shop in the main lobby of the theater where you can buy different dresses for Peach and different ribbons for Stella. And in my opinion, it was kinda pointless. You're only regular Peach in your dress between levels for part of the first level of each transformation and for 4 of the 5 bosses. In my opinion, there's not really much point of the cosmetic change if you're not going to really see it that often. It feels like this shop was just added as an excuse to have coins in the game, honestly. On each floor of the theater, you can find certain thieves to talk to, which will let you do some rehearsals for some of the different transformations. These are practice stages where you can earn more coins and cosmetic ribbons as prizes for meeting certain goals. I didn't really do any of these besides the sword fighter one, and it was ridiculous. If you get hit by an enemy, you lose, which, yeah, makes sense. But there's also a time limit. However, even if you make it to the time limit without getting hit, there weren't enough enemies to even win the top tier prize. I don't know how you're supposed to do it. I didn't really bother doing any of those stages because the prizes are just cosmetic or just coins, both of which are pointless. Now I'm thinking I probably will at some point go back and 100% this game, in which case I'll have to do those bonus rehearsal levels, but otherwise I'd say they're really not worth doing. Something that was actually a very pleasant surprise is there's actually a post-game here. Now, it's not a whole lot, but it is enough to keep me playing. You can refight the bosses, and this time you have some added challenges with different goals to complete. Completing the goals will earn you more Sparkle Gems. And even though there aren't more bosses to unlock, the gems are actually still valuable. There's a new shop added in the post-game which sells decorations for the different floors of the theater, and instead of coins you pay with your remaining Sparkle Gems. And I think this was a really good way to use the extra gems. Honestly, this makes them actually feel useful, unlike when you're still completing the main story. And there's a new sort of collectible to find. If you talk to the Ninja Sparklet in the lobby of the theater, he'll tell you that his ninja students are hiding in all the stages and he challenges you to find them. Now, I haven't gone through to find them all just yet, however, I did look online to see what the reward for finding them all is because I was curious. And I have to say, the reward is really not worth it. The prize is another dress pattern. Considering that you get it after you complete the main story and basically all of the post-game, and considering the fact that the dresses were already basically pointless, This is probably one of the worst post-game rewards I've ever heard of. So obviously my main issue with the game is the difficulty. Most of the game was just ridiculously easy. While some of the later stages were slightly more difficult, they still really weren't any sort of a challenge at all. The bosses were all, in my opinion, too easy, and the final boss was absolutely ridiculous how easy it was. It was actually easier than most Kirby bosses, and Kirby was meant to be one of Nintendo's easier franchises. Now, this game was clearly meant to be for younger kids, and I took note of that when I played the demo, that it seemed like it was pretty easy. Now, I hoped it would get more difficult, but I didn't think it would be, and I was right. The game is just meant for a much younger audience than some of the other games I've played, so it was a lot easier. So overall, what do I think of Princess Peach Showtime? Well, I really like it. It's a very good game. Now, clearly this game was designed more for young girls to play, but even being a guy in my mid-20s, I enjoyed it. It was very fun. So really, this game can be for anyone. But if you're older like me, you should not expect much of a challenge. Now, that lack of a challenge really isn't a bad thing. This game being so easy meant that it really was more of a relaxing adventure than most games, and I really enjoyed that. However, it's short. Not counting the bosses or the rehearsal stages, there are 30 levels, and 10 of them are significantly shorter than the other 20. So it is a very short game. And between how short it is and how easy it is, this is actually one of the few times that I disagree with how Nintendo's priced the game. This game is $60, which is obviously because it's starring one of Nintendo's main mascots, Princess Peach. But it, in my opinion, is just too short and easy for it to really be worth $60. If you're interested in playing this game, I would highly recommend you wait until it goes on sale. Pricing aside, it's definitely fun. It's not perfect, with pointless collectibles and a basically non-existent story. But if you're looking for a fun, pleasant, cheerful adventure, Princess Peach Showtime might be something you want to check out. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and consider subscribing. Did you play Princess Peach Showtime? What did you think of it? Did you think it was as easy as I did? Please let me know what you think down in the comments. Well, until next time, so long.